So, episode 20. So as I was sharing with you, my husband, I wanted him to take me to the ER. I was feeling really just not mentally with myself where I needed to be, and thought I needed to possibly have a stay because of, my mental health at that time. And I got in the car with him, and he's just like, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this job? Why don't you just quit?" And I remember saying to him, "Is that an option?" And he's like, "Yes, I hate seeing you like this." And I was like, "But how are we going to make it?" He's like, "Well, we'll find a way. We always do." And I said, "So I just resigned." He's like, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, let's drive. I need to process this." So we drove, and I thought, and we talked, and I thought, and finally I said, "You can take me somewhere so I can buy a laptop. I'm quitting, and I need to start looking for other jobs, and I need my own laptop to do that." So he did. He took me to a store. We got a laptop that day. It was a Sunday. I came home, wrote my resignation letter, and sent it, and I was done. And it was such a relief. I was so happy to be done with that job. And I remember that next Monday coming and seeing my supervisor online, because we had an internal way of communicating when we'd see how, it was like a chat thing where we could see if someone was online or not. And I saw she was online, and I thought for sure she'd call me when she saw my email, but she was in the chat saying all these chipper things and blah, 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 blah. And so I was like, yeah, nope. This lady doesn't have a clue what's going on. And let me pause for a second. Another little tidbit that just rubs me the wrong way. Remember how I mentioned a previous episode about strength finders? Another thing that was nuts was that she started color coding our calendars to the strength finders, and then you'd have to start calendar invites with what areas of strength finders were going to be needed to do the meeting. Like, I don't know, you're losing your logic and your learning or something. It was a certain color. Yeah, I wonder if that's still being done. But anyways, I'm all for organizing and having things neat and tidy and organized. But whew, man, that lady just took it to a whole nother level. So anyways, that Monday, eventually, after a little while, I was like, I can't deal with this anymore. I can't wait for her to look at her emails. I mean, there'd be times where she wouldn't answer emails at all. She couldn't figure out how to use like Zoom or just other things. I'm like, well, maybe she doesn't know how to open the email. I don't know. So I was like, I'm just gonna rip this Band-Aid off. So I called her, and I was like, "Hey, have you seen your emails?" No, I'm just getting in the computer, looking at us all, right, and looking at them. And I'm like, "Well, you might want to see the one that I sent you this weekend. I have resigned." And she's like, "What?" I was like, "Yeah, I think it's best. I have resigned. So I'm giving you my 2 weeks notice." And she was just like, "Oh, why?" And before I could even say anything, she's like, "Oh, it's because your grandma is sick." Lady, you're an idiot. My grandma had been sick like a year before. She didn't have COVID, but my grandma, was in her 90s at the time and had really bad bronchitis. And there were a few times where we thought it was touch and go, but it had been a year. This lady was so clueless about what was going on in other people's lives. Unless she really liked you, she had no clue. I just went with it. I was like, I could sit here and tell you that I've decided to join the circus, and she would manipulate it into something else. I was like, sure, yeah, my grandma, whatever. So she's like, "Well, I've got to think about this. I need to think about this. I need time to think about this." And I'm just like thinking in my head, "Lady, you take as much fucking time as you need, because I'm done. I'm gone. So you can think about it for the next 20 years. I'm out of here." So that next day, something had been bothering me for 2 years. And I thought, you know what? I have nothing to lose. I don't think I'm going to look for a job in this organization anyways. So I have nothing to lose. So I reached out to this other person who I knew through my supervisor. It's like, hey, do you have a minute to chat? She's like, sure. I called her up and I was like, you remember a couple years ago when I worked at and this was at my first job with the other crazy lady, and you had taken a training, and afterwards we were talking, and you worked for my current supervisor at the time when I'm calling her, so that supervisor. And I was telling you how, I wanted to really, join that team and everything, and I could tell there was something you wanted to say to me, but you didn't. What was that? She's like, her answer, I'll remember it forever. Her answer was, what did they do to you? And I knew right then, this wasn't me. This wasn't me. And she proceeds to tell me about other people who had worked there, and herself included. And the stories were aligning. Same kind of things were happening. Just demeaning treatment, manipulation, lies, talking about you. And to be honest, to even back up, I had seen my supervisor do this with contractors and interns on my team. I had seen it. She had talked with me how she would deliberately do things to try to get the contractor or the intern to leave. And I kept thinking, oh, well, this is because they weren't in the job status I was. But, she did it with contractors and interns. And at the time, I didn't think it was right, but I was like, oh, okay, I can't fix this. But here I'm finding out she's doing this to everyone. She's doing it to an employee such as myself, which is like a full-time, type of employee, not a contractor. And then she's doing this to contractors, anybody. And, the person shared with me that other people, that had been in situations like this, and it also had affected their mental health. And I was just livid. Oh, wow. In the F did I allow myself to hit rock bottom mentally because of this person? And I was so glad I was done. And it lit a fire in me. And I basically said, I reached out. I think I ended up reaching out to my director because I didn't care about chain of command. And I said, I want to sit down. We're doing an exit interview. When do you want to do it? And so we ended up coming up with a time.